So my name is Gearoid. I work for Nomad Capitalists. We've helped investors and entrepreneurs go offshore and set up offshore for the past 12 years. And our big mantra is go where you're treated best. And I think a lot of people kind of misconstrue that a little bit and think that we mean physically you need to go and leave and go where you're treated best, but it means far more than that. So, for example, a big problem that we've seen in the Bitcoin space and the crypto space, where maybe over 40% of our customers come from, is it's very hard to do crypto-friendly banking. So one of the most tax efficient ways to use your crypto is to borrow against crypto, but it's not something that you see in traditional banks in every major street in every country. So we strongly believe in planning. And the reason is that you can plan a corporation that suits you better from a banking perspective, that suits you better from an investing perspective, that gives you lower taxes, that gives you maybe a bigger return on freedom. Maybe we're a little bit lucky in Ireland, our passport is very strong, but if you're from somewhere that isn't that strong, you might have more travel restrictions. So how we do this is pretty straightforward. We do an upfront planning service, so we spend 6 to 8 weeks with everyone who becomes on board as a client with us, and we go through everything from your current finances, your current structures, if you employ people, where you'd like to employ people, what your costs are, what it would look like for you to have the perfect lifestyle, what it would look like for you in the ideal world, your long, short, and medium-term goals. And coming out of this, we have a list of deliverables. For us, they could be as simple as get a residency in a more tax-friendly country, in a more crypto-friendly country. I know El Salvador has been a very popular one recently, and I'll talk a little bit more about the countries that we can talk about that are very tax-friendly towards crypto people later on. After that, we try to set that foundation for you to springboard off. One of the big problems that we've seen in crypto is that people find it very hard to maintain their crypto investments as needs change and as costs rise. So a considerable amount of young people have made a lot of money in crypto over the years, and as needs change, they need to buy houses, they need to buy homes, maybe they're getting married, they have no choice but to create taxable events and sell their crypto. And even some other more taxable events that people don't consider, like buying crypto with crypto, which in Ireland would be considered a taxable event, is something that people don't always report or aren't always aware of. And we aim to make people as aware of that as possible and provide the system and setup for them to be able to benefit the most in the long run. So obviously, we'd all like to hold all our Bitcoin forever, but not everyone is in that fortunate position. Another piece I think one of the speakers touched on earlier is how you hold your assets. So obviously, trusts are a very, very big piece in the crypto space right now, because one thing that we know for certain is that things change. Taxation and laws change. So right now, it's very okay to just hold all your crypto, hold all your Bitcoin, and not force any taxable events, but we can't guarantee that's going to be the future. And we believe in planning for that reason, to set yourself up, to protect yourself, and give yourself the best chance of the future that you want. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the tax-friendly countries that you can look at with crypto. So for example, Germany, which wouldn't be traditionally known as a tax-friendly country, because it's a Western country with relatively high taxes similar to us, they've introduced new laws over the last number of years where if you're long-term holding your crypto, any crypto you hold for more than 365 days will be exempt from capital gains tax, which is a massive difference between here and the 33% that we would pay. Now, would I suggest moving to Germany full-time? It really depends on your lifestyle, and that's why we look at those planning pieces. Would I suggest spending some of your time in Germany or becoming a tax resident? These are more interesting pieces that you go through in that planning service that I'll explain a little further. So for me, for example, and I'll touch on this later, I'll go through my experience of why I'm spending more time abroad, but for me, I still love Ireland. I'm still an Irish citizen. I still spend at least half of my time here. I haven't moved abroad permanently, but that doesn't mean you have to necessarily be a tax resident of this country. So really what makes you a tax resident of a country is, majority of the time in the West, is the amount of time you spend there. So if you spend more than 6 months within the country, you will automatically become a tax resident in most cases. Now, funnily enough, Ireland is one of the most beneficial tax countries for people who are not from Ireland on the non-domicile tax system. So I'm not going to go into all the nuts and details about that. If you want to hear me bore you to that later, I'll happily go through it with you. But non-domiciled essentially means that you're living somewhere and you don't intend to stay there for the rest of your life. So on the tax system in Ireland, if you're non-domiciled, you would only pay tax on the money you bring into the country or you source within the country. Now, other countries have this system too. So UK recently just got rid of it, and they were probably the founder of it, so let's all hope and pray that it stays in some of the other countries for people. But Cyprus would be another example where you would pay no capital gains tax, you pay no tax on your dividends, and you only have to spend in roughly between 3 and 6 months there a year to make benefit of that system. Now the caveat is you can't spend more than 6 months in any other country or you'll become a tax resident there as well. But through careful planning and essentially by looking at these facts and figures and the time that you're spending in each place and what your goals are and what you want to hold, you could spend a number of years really being far more benefited by these systems, including if you're not paying income tax, if you're somebody who's mining or somebody who is staking, then they could really help you to achieve your goals much quicker. Another place that we commonly talk about is Dubai. So there is no corporation tax or there is no capital gains tax in Dubai. It's very easy to get a residency in Dubai and spend 6 months a year there. It's a very, very cheap place to do business. There's a 9% corporation tax on most businesses if they're trading within Dubai. If you're trading outside of Dubai, it would be considered tax-free. So for a lot of people in the crypto space, especially from the US, we've seen a large migration into Dubai, meaning that there's also a lot more people to connect with, there's a lot more networking events, there's a much larger community of people there to either collaborate with, to learn from, to spend your time with. And I think for me, this is why Dubai is probably one of the better places if you're very open on where you're going to go to live. One of the other places, especially for us, that's very beneficial is Malta. Because Malta is within Europe, and if you hold an Irish passport, you have freedom of movement and travel and to work in Malta. Malta offers a complete flat taxation system of €15,000 a year. So if you're somebody who earns maybe in the six figures, holds a large amount of cryptocurrency, that's going to be a considerable tax saving for somewhere that's 5-6 hours away, relatively similar culture to us, like older English colony, so very similar to drive on the same type of road, use the same type of plugs, and you can still spend your majority of your in around half your time at home or some of your time traveling. So I'm going to go through a little bit about my experience and why I chose to do some of these kind of movements and why I chose to spend more time abroad. So I absolutely love Ireland. I will never give up my Irish citizenship. I love it here, but there is definitely things that are slightly different and things that I would prefer. I love the West Coast where I'm from, mainly between May and September though. So like for me, once it's dark at 10 o'clock when I'm going to work and dark at 4 p.m. when I'm coming home, it's not my personal preference. So some of the places I've started to spend some of my time, which are considerably more tax friendly and definitely more business and crypto friendly, are Latin America, Eastern Europe, and also some parts of Asia. So recently I spent a lot of my time in Malaysia. Prices in Malaysia are considerably more attractive. Taxes in Malaysia are considerably more attractive. Like the average cost of a home here would buy you several nice homes in Malaysia. The people are very familiar. They speak English as a first language. The service level is much, much higher. Costs are about a fifth of what they are here. So for me to spend a period of my time in Malaysia, especially while it's cold and wet in the winter, especially when it's very tax beneficial if you're on a PAYE income system or you have your own business or you hire staff, it's really just a no-brainer for me. The other thing about this is, and I'll kind of touch on it briefly, is hiring staff. So for us to do what we do, we serve a global audience. It's impossible to do it all from one country. We had to hire globally. And through this, we realized that there's a lot of skills that we not necessarily have here. There's differences in culture. There's more nuance to having a global company and a more diverse company. And as soon as we had a more diverse company, we found the profit started to grow pretty much immediately. Obviously, in some cases, labor is cheaper. In some cases, labor is more expensive. But like the level of education you can get in some of these countries with more focus on more modern technologies, with more focus on global taxes because their system doesn't have the same money generation as Ireland has, with more focus on, I suppose, a more conservative lifestyle and being a longer-term employee, which is something that we definitely see more in the West is more and more difficult, is to retain talent. Whereas in the East, especially in Asia, it's much, much easier to retain talent. It's much, much easier to serve them, and they're a lot more open about what they want. And for me, that's really made Malaysia a no-brainer in terms of a business setup, in terms of a personal tax setup, in terms of the weather and the lifestyle that you get there, especially with how far your money goes. Latin America, I spent most of my time recently in Colombia. Colombia, for me, had a very big misconception. I would have thought it had far more crime. I would have thought it had far more nightlife. And it's a much bigger, more rural country than I had considered. Obviously, most of my opinions were coming from things that I'd seen on TV or seen on Instagram. But when I went there, I realized that they have also a very, very diverse culture. Native Spanish speakers, which people kind of warn me about, their English isn't the best. But yet we've hired there and have 10 or 15 excellent employees with perfect English, with law degrees or tax advisory degrees, who work for a slightly cheaper rate, but it actually benefits them more in the long run because their income will be much higher than the national average. They're able to build, we're able to retain them. It's much more tax friendly, it's much more crypto friendly, and you have access to a lot of beautiful countries to travel and explore. Two other places that I'm going to mention briefly are more in Eastern Europe. So Serbia is another place that we have an office and we've kind of structured ourselves there and hired quite a lot of incredible English-speaking staff. Again, very high level of degrees, a lot more tax-friendly, especially if you're spending a portion of your time. A lot more to me like what Ireland used to be maybe 20 years ago from what I've heard. I'm not that old. But a lot of people talk about it being a little bit more traditional, a little bit more religious orientated. They have a very similar diet to us. They have a very similar kind of lifestyle to us. They're far more, I suppose, focused on the family and on that conservative version of lifestyle. And I think for some people that's extremely attractive. The last place I'm going to touch on, and we'll take some questions after that, is Georgia. So Georgia at the moment still doesn't recognise crypto as an asset. So it's not taxable for tax or capital gains, and it's not taxable if you're earning passive income from crypto. Also for standard income, it is taxable at 1% for foreigners. It's a very easy place to go to, again, quite conservative, but also very similar to what Ireland was, I suppose, 15 or 25 years ago. All right, thank you very much, and I'll take some questions now if you like.
Anybody there with questions? Yeah, two up the front there, coming up to you, 3, 4, 5. Okay, everybody's interested in.
Now, just a quick one. Just how about Italy?
Italy, it depends. So it depends on how long you're going to spend there, right? So tax savings is a very personal thing. You have to go through all literally what you're earning, what you have, what you're keeping. Italy does have a flat tax regime. Flat tax regimes are quite handy because once you pay that amount, there's nothing after that. But the flat tax in Italy is very expensive. It's €100,000 a year. Now, Italy can be quite tax efficient, but it depends on your personal circumstance. I'm happy to talk to you about it afterwards if you want, but it depends what you have and it depends what you're holding in assets, what you're making in income.
Okay, Govi, another one here.
I'm actually a Portuguese citizen and I've been here for a year now. Can I continue to declare my capital gains in Portugal? And if so, is it beneficial to do that?
So Portugal doesn't tax long-term holds on capital gains. So if you've held the asset for over 365 days, you wouldn't have to pay taxes. The problem with being a tax resident is that it's not something you choose, it's something you have to achieve, right? So to leave the Irish tax system, you can only do it once a year. It's at the very start of the year in January. And if you spend any longer than 308 or 180 days here, you will automatically become a tax resident of Ireland again. So anything you hold pre-leaving the tax system is still taxable in Ireland. And if you were to, let's say, spend 7 months in Portugal, then everything you bought and held for over a year would be exempt from capital gains. That make sense?
Yep, thank you.
Anybody else? There's some of the people there. Oh, there's a question down here from a lady down the end. Lovely. Up.
Hi, so Madeira in Portugal is crypto is Bitcoin friendly. So how would that work for somebody with Bitcoin wanting to move their established residency? Is that beneficial?
Again, it really depends. So it depends on your whole situation, and that's why you have to look at it a bit more holistically. It depends on what you're holding in crypto and what you're earning as income. Because you're going to inevitably pay income taxes if you're earning an income as well. It depends on the type of visa requirements you would need. If you're an Irish citizen, then it's very easy, right? You have the right to live and work there. If you're not an Irish citizen, then you're going to have to get maybe what's called a golden visa, which is a tedious process that costs a substantial amount of money as well. So to be honest, that's why each of these cases is very unique and individual. You have to weigh up the pros and cons in your goals. Ultimately, if you were looking for a community of people in crypto, yes, it's great. Is it good on taxable income from crypto assets on long hold? Really, really strong. But income tax-wise, it could be difficult. And will it give you the lifestyle you want? It's hard to know.
So it would be the same with Lugano then as well, which is Bitcoin friendly. Same thing, right?
Yes, but in reason. Like, it depends exactly what you're doing. As I said, you'd have to go through each situation. Like, some places like Georgia and Dubai are completely zero. So, you know, regardless if you're trading, holding, staking, whatever you're doing. So it depends what it is you're looking to achieve.
Anybody else there? Any more questions? No?
You can ask about Portugal.
Okay. I just want to talk about something quickly for a second. I've been talking to a few Americans recently, okay? And if you're an American citizen, if you want to leave the country, do you still have to declare 7 years after that? Can you talk a little bit about that?
It's indefinitely. So different taxation systems are very, very different. So for example, before we get into America, the average taxation system would be territorial, which is your pay tax where you are. It makes the most sense, right? But America have a citizenship-based taxation. So if you're an American citizen and you come and live in Ireland, you have to report in both places. And technically you could pay double the taxes. Well, the tax rates are going to be different, but you could pay double the taxes. Now, the US has tax treaties with most Western countries, like Ireland, for example, where you would effectively pay the same rate, but you need to declare and file in the US forever if you're a US citizen, even if you leave the country. If you've been gone for 40 years, you must file every year.
Yeah, it's crazy. A lot of people don't know that. Yeah. I think that there's only 2 countries in the world that do that, isn't it? America and another country?
There's a couple, but America is the only one that's true global citizenship tax. In Ireland, we tax global income if you're in Ireland and you're in the Irish tax system. All your global income is still taxed in Ireland. Canada and Australia are maybe halfway between us and the US, but the US is only the one true trapped passport where, regardless what it is, you must declare absolutely every piece and pay every piece of tax to both sides. And if you're not in a tax-friendly country, you have to pay it to both countries.